People living in many Milwaukee neighborhoods may have lower incomes than those in the suburbs, but officials want retailers, both large and small, to know that there's enormous purchasing power per square mile in the city, that there's economic strength in our urban neighborhoods because of the density of the population. The website of the Department of City Development offers direct access to this purchasing power and income data through the city's new asset mapping initiative.
We're going to aggressively push it. We want to make sure that every retailer that's interested in marketing products in the metropolitan Milwaukee area and every real estate broker and commercial real estate broker is familiar with this material and the opportunities that are available. All you have to do is look at streets that have come back strong, like Mitchell Street and Brady Street and King Drive, to understand the opportunity that's there.
The city has identified 54 neighborhood commercial districts. The Purchasing Power Database is part of a program to promote business called Milwaukee's MainStreets.
What we do is similar to a PR campaign, similar to a marketing campaign. We assist the retailers, the brokers, the commercial brokers community with the demographic numbers that these are tools that businesses use in deciding on where they're going to locate.
The historic King Drive Business District on the near north side is part of Milwaukee's MainStreets program. At one time the second largest retail district in Wisconsin, it's becoming a great success story with a cooperative effort between the city and the community.
By working with the businesses in these commercial districts, both locally owned businesses as well as the national retail businesses, we're basically painting a picture that's saying that there are some untapped dollars in these commercial districts, and these dollars are at your disposal if you choose to locate in a variety of districts, and we have several districts to choose from.
Well, first of all, the bid has always had an excellent relationship with the Department of City Development. And now with the Main Street program, that gives the department another tool to work with us. From a marketing aspect, the Department of City Development through the Main Street has been wonderful. It's providing us information, more data that we can get out to larger retailers and also the smaller retailers. So it also gives us another tool, another resource, some economic dollars to put back into the community. So the Main Street program has been great since I've been involved with it, with Dimitri George, Jenny Brown, the city development staff. It has been a big boom for us, if nothing else, just for providing marketing material. And that's what we need.
Milwaukee's MainStreets profile for this commercial district shows a population of nearly 35,000 within 1 mile of King Drive and North Avenue. Average household income of over $21,000, a total household income of $250 million. 54% of the homes owner-occupied.
In 1995, the bid put together a study, or had a study done. And what it showed was that in this area, King Drive, North Avenue, within a 1 mile radius, there's $50 million leaving the area. Not that the money isn't here, but actually that it's here, but it's leaving the area. Why? Because we did not have the business providing the goods and services. So the money is definitely here. Unfortunately, we may not be making what people know as the large incomes, but we're making a lot of small income. The density in this area has made it a boom. You can tell by driving up and down King Drive, the businesses that are coming, popping up, and they're not all just small business. They're large ones. Blockbuster Video, State Farm moved its claim office here, which also dispels another myth that the mayor has touted, is that crime in these areas are drastically going down. You don't have a State Farm claim office in the area where crime is going up. So businesses they're feeling good about it. The money is here. We're trying to encourage not only business come from the outside to come in here, we're also trying to get a lot of residents to look to start their own businesses. So that's one of the next goals that we hope to embark on.
The King Drive Commercial District, with its historic buildings, short commute to downtown, and active business improvement district, has seen many millions of dollars invested in the past few years. The redevelopment has been underway for some time. Among the early projects, the Department of Natural Resources building at King Drive and North Avenue, and the Northtown Retail Center across the street.
Northtown Retail Center is owned and operated by Inner City Redevelopment Corporation. It was the first project to get started here after the riots. And what it has served as a catalytic project for the whole redevelopment of this whole neighborhood, as well as ICRC along with the Northtown businessmen at that time, back in 1978, they helped to try to attract additional reinvestment in this neighborhood. So it's served as a catalytic project and as a startup project.
Other catalytic projects like the Schlitz Office Park and retailers like Walgreens and Blockbuster are also important anchors and participants in the resurgence of the King Drive Commercial District. The YWCA has made a major commitment to the area. Smaller retailers are finding a market for their products. Coming soon, the new Harley-Davidson Museum.
When I first got here, we didn't have a parking problem. Now we got a parking problem. I mean, you got a lot of traffic, a lot of activity. You can stand here today and see the amount of activity that's just occurring right here on this corner. And like when you look at south of North Avenue, a tremendous amount of development has occurred with a lot of new businesses opening up. Now we're focusing in on north of North Avenue. And we're starting to get some restaurants, some other activity out here. So you can come back in time in 5 years, people won't know the difference in this particular neighborhood because it's been changed dramatically. It's changed already tremendously in the last 12 years.
Milwaukee's MainStreets program offers national and local businesses site location assistance, technical assistance, help with grants and financing. Dimitri Jordan is proud to be a part of the redevelopment plan. He grew up here. So did Brian Haywood.
It's incredible to see an improvement, but it's even more so to be part of it. Like I said, my grandparents used to rent a house on the 2600 block of North Palmer Street. I grew up here. My grandmother used to work at Gimbel's. I remember waiting for her to come out so we can walk home. I used to get, when I had hair, used to get my hair cut at the Grand Barbershop here. So it's tremendous to be not only just to see it, but to be a part of it. It makes me feel good. When relatives come back into town who are no longer here, they always come here, not just for the memories, but to also see what's going on. The city has been a tremendous help through Main Street program, providing the staff by having us have that extra liaison to work with. It has been tremendous. They keep up with some of the things that sometimes some bids such as ours, we have a one-person staff. And so having that extra person at DCD who's focusing mainly on commercial development within particularly Central City neighborhoods helps us out, and it helps us get a lot of things done that would take a lot longer to do.
I have vivid and fond memories of shopping as a kid on what was then called 3rd Street. We used to do our Christmas shopping at the old Gimbel's and Schuster's right down the street. I did some research a little while ago, and I found out that there were over 200 businesses on 3rd Street between Walnut and Locust, and this was back in the mid to early 60s. So over 200 businesses, and not only retail businesses. The commercial district also provided professional services. There were a number of doctors, dentists, lawyers, insurance and real estate brokers that all occupied some space on King Drive or 3rd Street as it was then known. This is a district that has gone through those early growth stages of maturing, and it hasn't peaked up to this point, but there are a lot of examples of what commercial revitalization is all about in an urban market.
The profile sheet for the Mitchell Street Commercial District from I-94 to 15th hopes to attract retailers with more than 42,000 people within 1 mile and household income of $339 million. On Lincoln Avenue from I-94 to 20th, 39,000 people within 1 mile, $376 million in household income. The purchasing profile in the Kinnickinnick and Russell target area indicates residents spend an average of $30.6 million per square mile on retail items, considerably more than 8 suburban communities. Another example of a growing urban commercial district is Cesar Chavez Drive, the former 16th Street on the south side. Here, too, the city has an important community partner, the South Side Organizing Committee.
Our mission is really to empower residents to have a voice in what's happening in the neighborhood. And we've been around for about 10 years. But last year we began working along Chavez Drive with the businesses because residents in the neighborhood had told us that they saw tremendous potential in Chavez Drive. And so we began working here, meeting individually with the businesses and then having group meetings to find out what concerns the businesses had in common that we could work on together to bring in new businesses, to improve the image of Chavez Drive and bring in new customers. Those were the main concerns of the businesses, and that's what we've been trying to do.
Well, I remember in 1989 we used to be only a few people. Now the entire block is full of business, you know.
Eddie Rodriguez is one of the business owners Amy has visited. Eddie's Electronic Center has been on the street since 1989. Hoping to improve the image of the area and businesses, he's trying to establish a Cesar Chavez business group.
Well, what I'm trying to do right now is trying to get people, whoever own any business in Cesar Chavez Drive, like to get together and talk to everyone and see if we would be able to, let's say, get together and do something different.
As in the other Main Streets commercial districts, the city has created a profile showing the economic strengths and purchasing power of this area. Nearly 36,000 people within 1 mile of Chavez and National. An average household income of more than $23,000, total household income of $280 million, 62% of the homes owner-occupied.
And it's amazing the purchasing power in these neighborhoods. And one of the things that we've tried to emphasize is that on the south side, the population is growing, whereas in other areas of the city, there's been a population decrease over the past 10 years. The census shows that the population on the south side is increasing, and there's such a tremendous amount of people here that there's great spending power in the neighborhood, and the businesses that are along the street know that and are taking advantage of that. But what we really like to see is bringing in new businesses also to inform them of the spending power and the success that businesses can have along this street.
Chavez Drive and the surrounding neighborhood is a diverse mix of businesses, a diverse mixture of cultures, primarily Hispanic and Asian. It's a market of opportunity, looking for a larger and more diverse marketplace.
Chavez Drive it's a great place, and the businesses that are here really love this area. There's some whom I've talked to who said, I've been here 20 plus years and I wouldn't be anyplace else. I love this neighborhood, I love the diversity, the customers are great, it's a wonderful neighborhood. And some people don't have that image, but we see it as a reality here, that it is wonderfully diverse and that there's great opportunity here.
Become a Success in Milwaukee is the invitation the Main Streets program is offering to local and national retailers. Officials hope many more will discover the new markets within Milwaukee's urban neighborhoods and discover that the city's dense neighborhoods have the purchasing power to help those businesses succeed.
In light of 911, nobody asks anymore what firefighters have to do with terrorism. Now we understand quite well. If we ever are subject to a terrorist attack, it'll be fire, police, EMS that rush to the scene to provide that protection.
Members of the Milwaukee Fire Department train and train and train some more. Every month, the hazardous materials team practices its life-saving skills. Their priorities: to rescue victims while protecting themselves and other emergency workers.
What we're doing at this station is that we're simulating that we find a patient, a victim, inside of a building, and what procedures we would need to institute and follow to remove the person from what we call a hot zone, and that's a contaminated atmosphere, into the cold zone, then ultimately moving that person through a decontamination process, ultimately to the hospital for treatment. What they're doing now is they're dressing in a level A attire, which is the highest level of protection that we have for both your respiratory protection and protects you from any skin absorption hazards. A lot of it's common sense, like we've been practicing in the fire service for years and years. How do we effectively get into a building, remove a victim, and have them transported to the hospital? However, there are several different twists now that we're talking terrorism, where we may have mass fatalities and casualties. We've been quite aggressive us on the Milwaukee Fire Department and other city agencies preparing for this type of event if it should ever come to pass. Back in 1999, over at the VA hospital, we had a large drill which dealt with simulated VX, which is a nerve agent release. And it was a full-scale incident where we had fire, law enforcement, Milwaukee Police Department were there. And we spent a better part of a day exercising for these eventualities. So since that time, we just kept building, practicing, obtaining additional equipment, and hopefully if something does happen, we'll be prepared to respond appropriately.
While every firefighter receives some hazardous material training, about 75 are also members of the Haz-Mat team. The terrorism threat has added some new concerns. Instructors say terrorists can maximize fear if they are able to interfere with or harm the first to respond to a nuclear, biological, or chemical attack. That means firefighters.
We've spent a lot of time training dispatchers too to help us in the notification phase. What types of questions that they'll ask people when they call so that they're able to relay information to the first responders, so we have somewhat of a heads up so that we can protect ourselves from becoming casualties ourselves. And one of the first things, of course, that our first responders are trained to look for if we are suspecting this is a terrorist incident is to look for the secondary device. Generally, an ordinary object but out of place. So whether it's a briefcase or a duffel bag or it's a suitcase, those are the things generally that are the secondary device. Could be anything, but the idea is they'll look like ordinary objects because people generally aren't going to carry what looks like a bomb and plant it somewhere undetected. So our first thing is to protect ourselves, but also our job is to protect the public, and we will do that within our capabilities.
Recognizing and identifying hazardous substances quickly is essential. So the Haz-Mat training also includes working with the many types of meters that can detect chemicals of mass destruction.
The bottom line is to help us to identify what agents we're dealing with so that we know what proper levels of protection, so we can forward that information to hospitals so that they might know what types of antidotes to give to people, so we can detect on the scene, if the scene where our people are working who aren't in level A, who aren't in a hot zone, we want to be able to determine where the cold zone is, where it's safe. So we'll need to do that metering. Plus we would do metering on people to make sure after they've gone through the decontamination to verify that they truly have been decontaminated. So meters play a very critical role in our operation.
After the Haz-Mat team responds and rescues a victim of a hazardous material incident, it's important to try and remove the substance using water and a decontamination tent.
So that's something that we could deploy as a Haz-Mat team fairly rapidly, and what it would provide now is a warm water environment as opposed to someone being decontaminated with cold water that a fire engine would supply. And you should understand that if we were ever dispatched to a situation where somebody was contaminated with chemicals, especially in a terrorist incident when somebody's trying to harm people with chemicals, one of the most important things we can do for those people to help them is to get that contamination off them. And as bad as it sounds with cold water, the cold water actually closes your pores, which helps your skin to protect against further penetration of the chemical. And this system here is for people that have further problems that need to go to a hospital, because before we transport them, they'll get a secondary decontamination. So this tent is set up to do a real thorough scrubbing so that people in ER aren't being exposed to chemical agents. And really responding to a chemical agent for terrorism isn't all that different than responding to an accidental release of cyanide or some industrial chemical. So it's not totally new. It's not like it's reinventing the concept, but we're getting extra equipment and extra training as well with this in mind, because now we're talking about if it is terrorist, it's deliberate. They could be targeting first responders, so there's some differences there. But by and large, it's a lot of essentially the same types of protective, metering, decontamination, those things remain the same.
In this time of anthrax anxiety, Milwaukee's Haz-Mat team has been busy responding to dozens of calls to investigate suspicious substances. With their training and experience, these firefighters feel confident in their ability to deal with threats in the city of Milwaukee.
we're professional and we realize that we need to train and train and train again with these types of things.
I've been involved with Haz-Mat now for a good number of years. Over the past 5 years, I've seen more and more equipment be obtained by the city for anti-terrorism preparation. And being a frontline responder, I feel, as a citizen of Milwaukee, well protected.
I would say this project has been the best example of a public-private partnership that the city has seen in many years.
What Lisa Emmons sees is an 800-foot-long levee and a 750-foot-long flood wall. They will help protect about 130 Valley Park homes ravaged by flooding, most recently in 1997 and 98. While the Menominee River channel here has been quiet this fall, flooding is as old as the neighborhood, also known as Piggsville. This picture shows the aftermath of floods in 1917. This photo, the floods of 1937. In 97 and again in 98, the flooding led to one proposal to remove a majority of the homes in the neighborhood. Residents said that was not an option. Government agreed.
The Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District, I serve as a commissioner, took the lead on this, but working in partnership with the city and the Valley Park Neighborhood Association really brought it about. When you think, Tom, in 1997, I was down here during the flooding, and it devastated many people. And some people were giving up and said, I'm leaving. But thankfully, I think through the leadership of the commission, through the city and the neighbors themselves, what you see is something the city is very proud of. This park we're standing in is also part of the county, which played a big role too. It was 1.5 acres, it's doubled in size. It's become much more user-friendly with children. We have a beautiful ballpark right behind us. The valley has come back in many ways in terms of more people buying their homes in this area. It's a much safer neighborhood, and you have really the safety and security of knowing that the chances of you getting your home flooded now are very small. Many of the residents, Lisa Emmons, her mother, there's second and third generations of families have grown up in this neighborhood. And they made a commitment to this area, and they're fighting for it. And I think they're very proud of what they've accomplished, and they should be.
These homes once stood east of the intersection of 42nd and St. Paul. This is that same area today. "18 homes that once stood underwater were acquired for construction of the flood control project. 3 new homes were built in the neighborhood for residents who wanted to stay. At dedication ceremonies in October, representatives of government and the neighbors spoke of what can be accomplished when government and residents work together.
I think the success of this project shows what you can accomplish when you work with a neighborhood. And I'd like to thank Lisa Emmons and her neighborhood group for being challenging, being cooperative, and making sure that MMSD worked on the neighborhood's terms rather than some terms that they didn't agree with. It made the project better, and we're very pleased, and in fact, working with the community on these projects has become the model by which MMSD is doing all its flood control projects.
And I want to thank MMSD for the great job they did in communicating with the neighborhood and listening to the neighborhood and coming up with this solution, which the neighborhood was part of. The bottom line really is to build our community with nature, with the streams that we're blessed with in Milwaukee, the Milwaukee River, the Menominee River here, and the KK River. Instead of trying to conquer nature, try to work with it. Removing the drop structure upstream has allowed fish to move further up the Menominee, naturalizing the stream, working with nature instead of against it. Now this is a great recreational resource that can be shared between the neighborhood and people who visit to fish and to jog and hike and so forth. It's a win-win situation. That's what we're looking at. It's good for the suburbs, good for the city, making the streams more beautiful, more natural, and less likely to flood. That's what it's all about.
Not only has MMSD fulfilled its responsibility to protect Milwaukee residents and residents all over this community from flooding, which they've done with this project. If you take a second and turn around, look what they've done for this park. It bespeaks or tells me as a Milwaukee County representative how far MMSD is willing to go to help the communities and the neighborhoods not only protect themselves from flooding, but end up with these projects with a better community at the end of it.
The Valley Park Plan is part of a larger flood abatement plan developed by MMSD for the Menominee River watershed. Authorities say all communities in the rivershed are looking at investing in natural flood control.
It's been a long, hard road. We've gone through a lot, and you know, at first we started out with kind of a love-hate relationship with the district, but it's all come together, and we're very pleased with it and grateful for everything they've done for our neighborhood. You know, the valley here, the Piggsville neighborhood, is always referred to as a diamond in the rough. We're the oldest immigrant neighborhood here in the city, and I think this is a great first step to polishing that diamond a little better.
It just shows you that government can make a difference in people's lives, and a positive one, working with the residents of the area. You know, we did a lot in 4 years. When you look around here and look at old photos and look at the photos of the flooding, I mean, this is another world here now. And I think the reality is that we're all better for it.
The stately hilltop mansion on 34th Street, built in 1853, stands out among the modest bungalows and duplexes that dominate the neighborhood. This early photo shows the estate, then a summer home. The picket fence runs along the wooden Lisbon plank road. Mr. Uhrig is in the driver's seat of the carriage.
The house is fascinating because it is so symmetrical, I would say. Unlike many Victorian homes where function followed form, this is a case where form followed function. So when we go inside, we'll see in the staircase where a window is right in the middle of the staircase for no other reason than it has to be there because that's where it needs to be on the outside. They brought a marble mantle and fireplace up from their St. Louis home, light marble mantle that is still there. The ceilings on the first floor are 12 to 14 feet, depending on the rooms. There are 2 vaulted rooms in the basement. One was a wine cellar, and the other was a fruit cellar, and those are still there, still intact.
This picture from the 1880s shows the Uhrig home after 2 one-story wings were added. The eastern wing was cut back in 1913 when 34th Street was opened to Walnut. 4 generations of the family lived here through the 1940s. The duplex just north of the home occupies a spot where a fountain once stood. Nearly 20 feet tall, perhaps the largest privately owned fountain ever built in Milwaukee. The cupola had a commanding view of the countryside.
That might be one of the few cases where function followed the form. That is a very functional piece of this house because of ventilation purposes. In the summer, they built here for their summer home. That was their air conditioning. Most of the houses around here were subdivided from this parcel, and then the first subdivision was the Koenig mansion down on 32nd Street, which is another house of renown.
In general, the neighborhood filled up between 1890 and 1910. That was the bulk of it, but by 1930 it was all totally built up. With a few exceptions, this was from the start a working class neighborhood, and it was aimed at working class people.
The century-old neighborhood runs from North 31st Street to 35th Streets, from North Avenue to Valete. Peter Koch has lived here for 24 years.
I've had people say, "Why do you want to live there?" I said, "Because this is the real world." No, it isn't. And yes, it is to me. I guess I like it because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. My philosophy, if the world was perfect, we'd be useless, bored to death.
Only about 25% of the homes here are owner-occupied. That concerns many residents, as do the vacant lots, although some see them as a mixed blessing.
Neighborhood could use a little more fresh air. It's almost got a suburban feel when you see a vacant lot and it's taken over by the homeowner next door and fixed up. And as much blight as there is, if you walk through the streets, you'll see a lot of pockets of pride. Income in this area is very low, but there are still people who obviously take pride and find ways to do things with their homes.
Factories along the 31st Street industrial corridor flanking the railroad tracks once provided area residents with jobs within walking distance of their homes. Lisbon Avenue isn't the major business corridor it once was, but residents and community groups like Lisbon Avenue Development Corporation are working to revitalize the area.
Within this area we have over, I'd say about 12,000 residents, and the majority are African Americans. And we have a growing Asian population within this area too. We also have some challenges within this neighborhood. Currently we have about 125 boarded up properties, over 500 vacant lots in this area. But we look at those vacant lots as assets for future development within the area.
Another positive influence on the neighborhood is the Community Justice and Family Center at 34th and Brown, working to bring a wide range of criminal justice and social services to the area.
It's positive because, once again, what it does is that it really does address basic human needs. And that's what it's all about. It's about meeting a person at their point of need. And whatever problem a person has when they walk into these doors, if we can't address it on site, the very least we can do is make a referral and make sure that they come into contact with people that can address those needs.
Milwaukee Habitat for Humanity also plays a major role in Walnut Hill, rehabbing many neglected properties and building new homes.
When they rehab a house or build a new house, that goes to a homeowner, not a renter. That's a plus. It helps grow the stakeholders in the neighborhood.
What we would like to do is have a nice mixture of low-income people, middle-income people, and the higher end. Because I think that's what really builds a community. If you have a strong community, you have strong schools, you have a safe place where kids and families can live and play.
Another positive effort here is what's called a neighborhood college. Knowledgeable neighborhood volunteers helping other neighbors to improve their lives.
So it's one way people can pick themselves up by their own bootstraps a little bit.
What kind of topics? What areas of
study? Right now we have one course on how to stop paying rent and fix your credit and buy your first home. Another one is on managing family crises, and I'm teaching one on how to start a business in your home, because that might be an economic option for people.
Churches are prominent here as they are in other neighborhoods. One changed the look at 35th and Lisbon dramatically. St. Andrews replaced an X-rated theater. It's an eclectic neighborhood. You'll find beautifully restored properties. You'll find those in need of repair. There are community garden plots growing on former vacant lots. This unusual property serves as an outdoor museum, a collection of commercial outdoor art on and around the duplex at 33rd and Sherry. Residents want to see jobs, more housing, more businesses along Lisbon Avenue, and say community groups and individuals, with the help of city government, are working to make Walnut Hill a better place.
I think it's past the point that we would expect from the police department, city officials. It's really going to take community residents being empowered and given the tools to really affect change in their own lives. And this is what we're hoping that will start to take place here.
A lot of individuals are just taking on responsibilities for the neighborhood. It's not going to happen with large groups coming in or big capital investment coming in and saying, oh, we're going to change your world for you.
There's a lot of hope here, and there's a lot of future development that will be happening here in this neighborhood. There's a lot of people who are concerned not only with this neighborhood but with the city overall, and who have invested their time and money to make improvements.